We call it microgravity because that's technically right, but what it is really, Matilda, is you're weightless. You suddenly are freed from the tyranny of gravity. You can fly. It's like somebody just reached out, tapped you on the head, and gave you a superpower.
Właśnie wchodzę na pokład samolotu Zero G, czyli samolotu, w którym będą odbywały loty paraboliczne. Loty, w czasie których będę doświadczał nieważkości, ale co dużo ważniejsze, będę obserwował eksperymenty naukowe właśnie w warunkach nieważkości. Tak się akurat złożyło, że dokładnie w tym samym czasie, kiedy ja będę latał tym samolotem, znalazł dla nas czas Chris Hadfield, bodaj najsłynniejszy astronauta, człowiek, którego książkę w Nauka to lubię właśnie wydajemy. Poprosiłem więc mój zespół o to, żeby to on spotkał się z Chrisem, porozmawiał na tematy, no właśnie, nie będę zdradzał na jakie tematy, ale Wam życzę bardzo, bardzo dobrego oglądania.
So, hi, Chris. I want to start with the toughest question. So, how does it feel to use a toilet in microgravity?
We call it microgravity because that's technically right, but what it is really, Matilda, is you're weightless. You suddenly are freed from the tyranny of gravity. You can fly. It's like somebody just reached out, tapped you on the head, and gave you a superpower. And now you can fly effortlessly forever in any direction. It is the most joyous and liberating and natural feeling. I'm amazed how quickly you adapt to it and you just get used to that being your new normal. And it's so much better than gravity, where you're literally getting ground into the dirt by some invisible heel throughout your entire life. It is so much more pleasant and natural to be weightless. Or if you want to be specific, because there's a tiny bit of gravity from the moon and a little gravity from Jupiter and, micro millionths of a gravity, but essentially you just feel free and weightless.
Yeah, great. And is being in zero gravity the same thing as continuous falling, like this sensation in your stomach? How do you describe it?
When you get a sensation in your stomach from falling, what your stomach's actually telling you, it's telling you about the change. If you're riding the back of a bus and it goes over a bump, and for a second you float, well, you're going from gravity to sort of flying and then back into your seat, and your stomach floats up and down. But imagine in that little instant that you're floating, if that could just now be permanent. Okay. And when the engine shut off in your rocket ship, it's as if some great big beast has been jumping up and down on you and crushing you and shaking you. And now they grabbed you and they threw you off an eternal cliff. And now you just fly through nothingness forever. And it's beautiful. It's such a gift. And it's a very clear moment that you've actually arrived in space. And you get nauseous at first because your balance system doesn't know what to do without gravity. And it thinks maybe you've been eating a neurotoxin, a bad mushroom or something, and it makes you want to throw up. But after a day or two, your body accepts that this is the new reality, and you're away. And for however long you're living in space, you're a weightless creature. And it's almost unfair when you have to come back to Earth after that.
Yeah, I see. It's amazing. But do you know when will we build a permanent base on the moon? And do we even need to build it?
Well, do we need to build a permanent base on Earth? I mean, I don't know what need means. We don't need to.
Okay.
But most of us, we build houses and we build places for people. Do we have to? Not really, but we choose to because it's part of the human experience. And not very long ago, no one had chosen to build in New Zealand. About 8 or 9 lifetimes ago was the very first time a human being got to New Zealand. Up until then, nobody. And now, of course, a million people live in New Zealand. No one had ever been to Antarctica until a little over 100 years ago. And now thousands of people live in Antarctica because our technology got good enough that human beings can now live somewhere else and make that part of the human experience. And that's where we are in history now with space travel. For 24 years, people have been living on the International Space Station.
Yeah.
And our technology is just about good enough now that we don't just explore to the moon, just, for a day or two, send a few people to the surface. But now our technology is just getting good enough that we can live on the moon, just like in I don't know, Antarctica or New Zealand or Poland. It's just another place where people will live,
Okay.
and it's enabled by our own inventiveness and our curiosity and our tenacity.
Yeah, but can you imagine when will be built this base?
Sure. Well, we've sent robots to the moon since the 1960s.
Hmm.
12 people have walked on the moon. 24 people have gone to the moon, but 12 of them flew vehicles down 2 at a time to walk on the surface. But we've sent several robots to the moon since then, but no human being has been to the moon since late 1972, I guess,
Hmm.
and Apollo 17. Maybe that was 73, but anyway, early 70s. Long time, 50 years.
Yeah.
There's a crew training right now, 3 Americans and a Canadian. I'm proud because I'm a Canadian.
Imagine.
3 Americans and a Canadian are selected and training to go to the moon, and it might be late next year or early 2026, somewhere in there.
Okay.
They won't land on the
That's
surface,
soon.
but they'll go around the moon. So that's very soon.
Yeah.
China has flown several robots to the surface of the moon, including landing on the other side of the moon, retrieving some lunar samples, and flying them back to Earth. So if you can land a robot on the far side of the moon, a big robot, and collect samples, and then launch from the moon, dock, and then fly home and recover through the Earth's atmosphere with a robot, then it's not that big a step to do with people. And China has said, for sure, they will have people walking on the moon by 2030. That's a little over 5 years away. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we're at that stage in history where we're going from early exploration to settlement, and it's happened everywhere we live. But we're just alive and witnessing it happening on the surface of the moon.
Okay, you surprised me. It's so soon. And after the Apollo mission, many people had high expectation for space exploration, and many thought their grandchildren would be living on Mars by now. As we know, these expectations were a bit too optimistic, and since the Apollo mission, people have only been sent to low Earth orbit. This may change soon with the Artemitic mission. And do you think that if this mission is successful and we establish a lunar base, our grandchildren will have a real chance to live on Mars or not?
Oh, absolutely. Sure.
Okay.
You'd be a fool to think that human beings are going to stop exploring.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't live in the same place you were born. You don't live in the same house that you grew up. There was some place where you were born and then you learned to walk. Think about it. Matilda, you learned to walk before you learned to talk. Before anybody could ever explain anything to you,
Mm-hmm.
evolution had given you the ability to go explore, to go find things out, to go lick things and touch things and smell things and learn about the universe. And so it'd be silly to think that we're going to stop exploring. And the only limit will always be how good is our technology. And you talked about how, we thought we'd already be living on Mars. Well, people are optimists. That's okay.
Yeah.
But real things take longer. It's maybe important to realize, like, the first ship to sail the Atlantic was in 1492 with Columbus. And then 5 years later, 1497, James Cabot, Giovanni Caboto, sailed for England across and discovered Newfoundland in 1497. And the British didn't do anything for 100 years because they knew there was a whole continent and you just had to get in a ship and sail there. But they had problems at home and politics and, taxes and, real life problems. And they had to somehow fit exploration and settlement into the reality of just life. And that's exactly the same as what's happening right now. So yes, of course, it's like saying, could we ever have lived in Antarctica 150 years ago? Hard answer to question as to when, but now, of course, it's a common human experience. The moon is the same. We still have to invent things, and it's hard to predict when you're going to invent things. But first, space station. We've been living there for 24 years permanently. next the moon, because it's only 3 days away. Lots of problems to solve, but it's doable. And after that, eventually Mars. But Mars is much further away than most people think. It's very difficult to safely get to and back. But yeah, inevitably, of course we will.
Okay. And what's the biggest problems to reach Mars?
Our engines aren't good enough.
Okay.
It's let's say that you and I said, hey, let's get in a boat right on the northern shore of Poland, right there on the sea. And if we get into a little rowboat where each of us has an oar, and we bring along some food, some sandwiches, some hats, some drinking water, and then we said, let's go to Australia. I mean, we have a boat, we have food, we have hats, and water is connected all the way to Australia. But if we tried to row from the northern shore of Poland to Australia, we'd die. I mean, there are so many technical problems. But if you build a really good boat, if your technology gets good enough, then you can take a boat all the way to Australia. Or more simply, you can get into an airplane in Warsaw or Krakow and fly to Australia and be there almost the same day. Mars is somewhere in the rowboat phase right now. We can get there, but it's extremely difficult with the very primitive engines that we have. And now if we had to get to Australia, or if we had to get to Mars, then it might be worth the human risk. Mm-hmm. But for now, there's no great absolute burning necessity this year that we have to get to Mars. Life on Earth isn't about to be extinguished. And so it has to fit into everything else. And we have to wait until better engines get invented. So it doesn't take 6 months just to get there, because that's the biggest obstacle, is the amount of time it takes to get there. And therefore, all the other problems that come with keeping people healthy and safe over a long, long time in between planets.
Okay, great answer. And I want to go to more personal questions about your story. When did you decide that you want to become an astronaut, and what were the biggest challenges that you faced along the way?
I was 9 years old. It was a hot summer's night, and I walked outside and looked at the moon because I had just watched Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walk onto the surface of the moon. And I thought, that's the coolest thing that humans are doing. Of all the things that might happen in my life, that's the coolest thing. I want to do that. If they can do that, they're not magic. They're not superhumans. They're just people. If they can do it, then maybe I can do it. So I decided to start turning myself into an astronaut just before I turned 10 years old. And it's a lovely thing. It gave me a purpose throughout my entire life of how to choose what to do next. And if you read my book, An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth, it's very much about that, of how is it that you choose what to do next in your life, and how important what you choose to do is. You determine the path of your whole life based on what you're choosing to do next. And if you don't have big dreams, if you don't have some sort of big ideas of what might happen in your life, then how do you choose what to do next? Are you just trying to entertain yourself? Just stimulate your nerve endings? That's maybe okay for a while, but it doesn't lead to, I don't think, a full and sustainable, rich, rewarding kind of life. So I just made that choice early, and I didn't know how to do it. So I thought, well, I'll do what astronauts do. I learned to fly with the Air Cadets. In Canada, they have an Air Cadet program. I went to various universities. I learned to swim. I learned to scuba dive. I learned to speak other languages. Unfortunately, I don't speak Polish. My apologies.
Oh, that's okay.
But I appreciate that you have learned to speak English. And after doing all of those things and serving my country and becoming a test pilot, I got selected by the Canadian Space Agency as an astronaut and flew in space 3 times. So a 9-year-old's dreams can come true, but it takes a big, bold vision, and it takes tenacious patience. The necessity to recognize this is going to take decades, and I'm going to have to work on it every single day. And most days, nobody will even notice that I'm working on it. But hopefully, progressively, I'll be able to turn myself into someone that someday they'll trust to fly a spaceship.
Yeah, great. That's, I think, very powerful mindset. And what kind of skill sets do you think young people should have to achieve huge things? What's the most important? Patience or
the most important thing is to take care of yourself.
okay.
Take care of your own health. You only get one body, and you want it to serve you for whatever, somewhere near 100 years. So every day, just think about the fact that you get one of these, and you get to control you get to choose every single thing you eat. You get to choose how much exercise you're going to get. So number one, if you want to have a happy, successful, healthy, long life, then take care of your body. Number two is take care of your mind. Learn complicated things. Push your ability to understand to its very limit. Read, study, try and be curious. How do things work? When you get in a car, and you turn the key or push the button, what happens when you push in the accelerator pedal? What's actually happening when you breathe? What's actually happening to keep your body alive? When the sky is light blue or the sky is black, what's going on? Be curious about the universe or about the universe around you. So keep care of your body and your health. Be curious and always learning about the complexities of the universe around you. And then the third thing is learn how to make decisions and stick with them. Have the self-discipline. Like you could do, it just became November. You could say every day in November, I'm going to, I'm going to do 100 push-ups, or I'm going to learn 5 words of Japanese, or I will eat 15 Big Macs every single day. And by the end of November, you will be a different person because you made a decision about yourself and then you stuck with it. And if you can learn how to make decisions and stick with them, then not only will that help you become an astronaut, but it'll help you succeed no matter what you want to do in life.
Yeah, it's amazing. And what advice would you give to young people who want to follow your path and be astronaut in Poland?
Well, I'm from Canada, which doesn't have rocket ships.
Yeah.
Doesn't have launch pads. We don't have NASA, but there are 80 countries with space agencies, 80 different countries around the world. So lots of countries around the world are like Poland or like Canada, where they're not launching the rocket ships, but they have people working in the space industry. And so if you're a young person, I spent Christmas or New Year's in Krakow one year and went down in the salt mine and was out on the square for the big New Year's celebration and everything. If you're a kid from Krakow or wherever across Poland and you're interested by spaceflight, well, you have to be true to your own heart. What is it when you go into a library or bookstore or you're scanning online? What do you really find interesting? You don't find everything equally interesting. There are a few things that really suit you. And if one of them is exploring the universe or flying spaceships, then start working on it right away. Take care of your body, but start learning about the things that you're curious about. Start gaining skills. And you're not going to become an astronaut, by Monday, but you could still learn things this weekend, like where did the moon come from? Or why is the biggest volcano in the solar system, why is it on Mars? Or why do the moons of Jupiter, some of them, why do they seem to be made of water? And you can just do all the research. And by Sunday night, you could answer one of those questions really deeply. And you're not an astronaut yet, but you're a little bit closer to becoming an astronaut. And so I think having those goals in mind and then being relentless in changing who you are to turn yourself into someone who's closer than your dreams, to me, that is what a young Pole should do on their way to becoming an astronaut or whatever it is that you dream of.
Great. Great. So I have a last question for you by my side. Have you achieved all of your dreams, or do you still have some goals left to fulfill? What dreams are still in your
I've done The world is so huge and full of opportunity. I've only done a few things. I've done some of the things that I set out to do, but gosh, I'd never written a book until 12 years ago. And now I've written 5 international bestsellers, and I'm writing a 6th best-selling book. And the Apollo Murders series is being made into a television series. So I'm becoming an executive producer. And I've learned how to run companies. I'm on the board of several companies. I work with an international technology incubator called the Creative Destruction Lab to help companies, people with good ideas, grow into big, successful companies. Every single day, there's just this huge smorgasbord of challenges and ideas that I'm very curious about. Specialization is for insects. We're people. We can change our mind. We can do a million new things. My wife has had 5 different careers, and I think you should. Don't just be one thing. Don't be a monolith in your life. Take advantage of the blessing that life is long and that we can learn and that you can constantly recreate yourself. I'm still a 9-year-old kid full of dreams, trying to turn myself into the person who can do those things.
Yeah, it's amazing. I agree with you with 100%. And now Carol have some question for you.
Great.
Thanks, Matilda. Thanks, Chris. Hearing you, it's like everything is possible, and easy. You inspire me to say that
nothing's easy. And but the only way to make sure that things aren't possible is to give up. And the easiest thing, if you really want to talk about easy, give up. That's the easiest thing. And say, no, that's too hard, or other people will do that. And so, I'm going to give up. And that's fine. I've given up on lots of things in my life. But for the stuff that's important to me, I don't give up. And it's never been easy. I've worked my entire life to be able to do the things that I'm doing. But that's kind of that's the joy of life, that path, all that work, that is the life itself. To me, that's the very secret of life. But if you expect it to be easy, then you're going to be disappointed and you're going to quit, guaranteed.
Okay, so it's not easy, sometimes almost impossible. But what I wanted to say is that I think that hearing you, that our vocation or our purpose for whole humanity is to spread life in the universe. So hearing you is like, let's do it. We have to do this.
I agree.
So Chris, time for a commercial break. Let's imagine that we are in Canadian or American morning show. Could you promote your book, Polish edition for Polish audience? I know you don't speak Polish, but try in English, please.
Sure. As an astronaut, I've had a chance to do amazing things. I have commanded a spaceship. I have walked in space. I've lived at the bottom of the ocean. I have worked with people from all around the world. I've seen 2,650 sunrises and sunsets. I have surfed on the northern lights of the world. And all of those things happened because of decisions I made on Earth. How could I turn myself into somebody who could do those things that seem like dreams? How can you take who you are right now and start making choices and decisions that will let you become the person that you dream of being? And that's why the title of the book is An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth. That's where your life occurs. And no matter what you dream of doing, learning how to get there, learning how to make choices, how to put up with all of the setbacks, how to keep optimistic in the face of problems, and learning how to recognize the beautiful things that happen every day on the way to achieving your dreams. To me, that is the very essence of the secret of life. And that's the reason that I wrote the book, An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth. It's in 28 languages. It's all over the world. Millions of people have found the book extremely helpful, and I hope you do too.
And now in Poland, printed by Science I Like It Foundation. Wow, we don't need million and Hollywood budgets. We need a 9-year-old Canadian boy with a lot of dreams to promote the book soon in our store, but even before we printed this book, we have a huge group of fans in Poland. We asked them for some questions for you. Some of them Matilda used just a moment before, but I have very specific questions from your fan. She wrote a comment: "OMG, this book is my number one, and I even have a question for the author. Could I ask you for a further explanation on the type of cosmic radiation the author perceived as flashes visible even with the closed eyes? I'm referring to when I close my eyes. I sometimes saw very fine flashes of light, cosmic rays, high energy particles from some distant star. What kind of radiation exactly is this, and why do some astronauts perceive it while others don't?"
Yeah, so it's an amazing thing when you're living on board a spaceship. If you just wait and close your eyes, occasionally you'll see a flash of light in one of your eyes with your eyes closed. And when the very first astronauts sensed that, they were like, I'm not going to tell anybody I'm seeing that. I think I'm going crazy, you know, and besides, maybe the doctors will ground me. But after a while, everyone realized, oh, this is a normal thing that we see. So what is it? What's causing it? And as the reader said, it's a high energy particle or radiation of some sort, like a proton, a little fragment of an atom that is coming through space at the speed of light. But instead of just going randomly somewhere, it went right through the nerve that connects your eyeball to your brain. And if you think about how you see, it's the light coming in, and then it's turned into a little electrical signal that your brain can process. So when you get a little particle, an atomic particle coming through your optic nerve, your body doesn't really know what to make of that. And so it tells you, it alerts you as a little flash of light, because it doesn't know what to do with that little electrical impulse. So you're actually seeing the radiation going through your body, little high energy protons that probably came from our sun, but could have come from other suns in our galaxy. You know, it came bursting out of a sun, traveled through light years of space, didn't hit anything all along the way, and then boop, right through one of your eyeballs, and you got to see it. And you can't see it on Earth because the Earth is not only protected by the magnetic field, but also by the thickness of our air and all of the water vapor, the clouds and humidity that's in the air. It stops those little particles. So some little particle comes millions and millions and millions of kilometers through space and then gets stopped by our atmosphere or gets stopped by your optic nerve. And I think it's more delightful when you actually get to see it.
I think you miss being in space. Am I right? Do you miss it?
No, I have been in space. I only miss the things I haven't done.
Okay.
How could you miss something you've done? I mean, that's like, imagine if there was a menu with 30 choices and you already had the hamburger, and someone came in and said, hey, do you miss the hamburger? And no, I had the hamburger. I'm missing everything else. It's the other things that I'm curious about, not the things I've already accomplished.
Okay, so let's compare space to hamburger and underwater life with Polish pierogi. You had the rare experience of being both an astronaut and aquanaut with the Nemo mission. Which environment posed greater challenges, and what did each teach you about living or operating in extreme conditions?
Yeah, as an astronaut, I served for 21 years. I was in space for 6 months. So for 20 and a half years, I trained and prepared and learned to speak Russian and studied and trained in Europe and in Japan and in the United States and Canada. And one of the ways that we train is not just technical, but also psychological. How do you get ready for being inside a very small spaceship for months or even years? How do you get psychologically ready for that? Where you can't leave. You can't even go outside. You can't just come home. How do you get psychologically tough and resilient enough? And we have lots of different things. We do Arctic survival. We do mountain survival. But we also go live at the bottom of the sea in a habitat. And once you are down in a habitat on the bottom of the sea for a while, you can't come right back up because of the difference in pressure, and it changes the gases in your blood. And you have to very carefully and slowly, it takes about 18 hours to come back to the surface. So it provides a nice training environment for actually flying in space. Flying in space is far, far more complicated being an astronaut. Being an aquanaut, that's not even really a thing. I mean, anybody can just scuba dive down to the bottom of the sea. I mean, you need some basic skills. But it was a great training environment for me and members of my crew to get ready for the much more complicated task of leaving Earth and living on board a spaceship.
You told us that the key message of the book, but I want to ask you about, I would say, national pride. Do you have, do you think, how important do you think your experience as Canadian citizen is example for kids in Canada and in smaller countries?
Well, it's very difficult to be something if you've never seen it. If you don't know something exists, then it's never going to affect your decision making. And the decisions you make as a child are the ones that, you know, are going to be very important as to what sort of adult you're going to become. So I think it's really important that we let our children see the choices that are available to them. Give them role models that maybe they can go, wow, if Miroslav Hermaszewski can fly in space, then maybe I could fly in space. What did he do? And Canada has done an excellent job of that. We've had over a dozen Canadians fly in space. We've chosen people from, we're the second biggest country in the world. We've chosen people from right across our country who have been very good at what they were doing. And then they got selected as an astronaut. And then they served for decades, not only training and flying in space, but also representing space flight, going and visiting schools, talking about it publicly, talking to people like yourself, writing books about it, helping to share the experience so that if you are a young person somewhere in Canada or somewhere in Poland, and you're just wondering what's going to become of your life, it's really lovely to be able to come across somebody who's done something that seems marvelous to you, that seems magnificent to you. And so I think it's really important to share those experiences when you are an adult so that young people can not only do what you've done, but can perhaps exceed any of the things that you could have hoped to accomplish within your own life. But they really need a role model. They need that example. They need to see it in order to be it.
All right. So if you had the opportunity to advise Poland on developing its space programs or space educational programs, what would be your top recommendation? Let's three basic steps.
Well, let's see. Poland has a long tradition of flying in space by cooperating with other countries. And I got to know Poland's first astronaut, cosmonaut, Miroslav Hermaszewski. He helped form the sort of international professional society of astronauts and space explorers called the Association of Space Explorers. And so Poland has been involved in the space business almost since the beginning. In 2012, I think, Poland decided to join and become part of the European Space Agency. I think that's a really important step so that Polish people and Polish businesses have the opportunity to be part of that big European space consortium. And if you just look in the last 8 or 9 years, I looked up the numbers, it's about 200 Polish companies have built and provided space hardware and operations for things that are going on in space, for satellites, for exploration, and for human beings flying in space. And I think it's total, I looked up the number, about 270 million euros worth of business for Poland in space. So I think that's a really smart way to do it. Number one, get involved in the space programs that exist. Be cooperative, become part of them, like the European Space Agency. Have national space organization, whether it's the Polish Space Agency or the Canadian Space Agency, to try and collectivize all of the efforts and help the government recognize that this is part of what's going on. Have it in schools, have those programs be promoted in schools. People should know about the Polish accomplishments in space, like in Canada, where we were the third nation on Earth to have a satellite, and we pioneered space communications and sensing of the ionosphere and robotics, Canadian space robotics. So find an area where your businesses can really excel, and then find ways for your kids, young Poles, to get involved and to be able to pursue their dreams in high school programs, outside programs at school, astronomy programs, rocket launching programs, and then in universities, what courses are available, and then how are you tied to the world space community. And you're in a very lucky geographical location, right next to so much space exploration with all of the European countries that are involved in it. And so I think to continue to participate in the European Space Agency, but also to grow that participation, I think all of those will help provide more opportunity for Polish citizens and Polish businesses to take advantage of the tremendous opportunity that space exploration and space travel and space commerce provide.
All right, one more short commercial break. Guys, Chris Hadfield's book in Polish edition, available now, published by Nauka to Lubię, Science I Like It. Details in links below. Chris, if you could add one more chapter to your book today, what would it be about?
Well, I'm always most interested in the future. I mean, the past to me is just a way to better prepare for the future. You can't change the past. All you can really do is try and learn from what's happened to make better decisions right now so that you can have a better future. And so what's coming in space travel? What new things have we developed recently? And so to add a chapter to An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth, I think 100% reusable spaceships, that's going to really change the history of space exploration and utilization. The spaceships that are being developed primarily right now by an American company called SpaceX. But if you look to China, they're working really hard to build on that technology and build their own reusable spaceships, where the cost comes way, way down and the safety can still be kept really high. And it's like, imagine if I'd written a book in 1908, and then Henry Ford invented the Model T car. And my book had been about travel. Well, shoot, as soon as the car was invented, it'd be like, wow, this is going to radically change the update the book. And so these big new technological changes in ability to safely get off Earth for a much reduced cost, to me, that would be worth exploring. What's that going to mean for space commerce, for how we're going to put things into Earth orbit? What are we going to do about orbital debris? How is this going to help with the settlement of the moon? How are we going to use this technology to push and get ourselves to Mars, get all of our eggs out of one basket? I think that would be worth another chapter if I were to write another one for An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth.
Available now, published by Science I Like It, Nauka to Lubię. All links below. Chris,
hey, hold that book up again. I love the cover of that book. I love the choice you make, because that image of having the world in your face, of seeing the world and its undescribably generous beauty right there in front of you, and trying to make that your new normal, this recognition of what the world actually is, and think about what you're going to do when you're back on Earth again after your space flight. I think you've captured it beautifully on the cover of that book.
I just wanted to ask you for a short farewell address, but I think you already did it in such a great way. Chris, it's an absolute honor to have you with us today. We are so thrilled we could be with you here. It's coincidence that our founder, Dr. Tomasz Rożek, who is the European Space Agency advisor, exactly right now, he is in France, flying with our new Polish astronaut Sławomir Szuznański in this 0G plane. He says hello. He really wanted to be here, but your calendar and the European Space Agency calendar, they today this is a space day in our organization. So I hope that Matilda and me,
it was absolutely honor.
Good substitute hosts. Guys, I'm telling to Polish audience, give us chance. Tomek is great, but maybe sometime we will be here again. Please give us a chance. Chris, one more time, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've inspired so many in Poland and in Canada, in everywhere on Earth and beyond, with your journey as an astronaut, as a writer, storyteller, with your songs, with your videos. Thanks to you, right now I know how to that I can swallow toothpaste without any consequences. This is my favorite video. So we are very excited to have your book. We are thrilled that the book will be published, that is published right now when people will watch this. Thank you so much. Matilda?
Thank you so much. You shared with us an incredible story what inspires, I think, will inspire young people and inspires me. So thank you so much for that. And it's absolutely an honor for me.
Matilda and Carl, thank you very much to you both for publishing the book in Polish. So people right across the country could have a chance to think about those ideas, to experience them as if we were having a direct conversation together, to hopefully look at the experiences and the ideas that have allowed me to do what I've done in my life, and then think about, how does this apply to me? Maybe some of these ideas, an astronaut's guide to life on Earth, maybe some of these ideas will help me get a little closer to my dreams as well. So thank you for being part of that. It's been a joy to spend some time with you today, and I look forward to hearing back from people who have read the book right across the country.
Yeah, thank you
so much. Please like it, comment below, and subscribe our channel. See you soon on Earth, on In Space.
See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.